I am bored out of my mind and also like missing humans. So first of all, pardon the train that will go by occasionally because I live right next to the Red Line here in Chicago. I had some people ask some questions about what I'm doing in order to change the pockets on my jeans because fashion decides that women don't need normal size pockets for whatever reason. So what I have done is like this is the inside of the pocket. The sad thing is they have all of this space here that your hand cannot physically go into. So basically there's an entire area of the pocket that if you wanted to, for a lot of them, you can just rip out this seam so that it gets rid of the space in between there so that you get all of this space as well. Now, we don't generally put our hands in our pockets and then have them go towards your belly because the last thing anyone wants to do is add space to the belly. So what I did was I took an old sheet and attached it. So I took a template from a pair of jeans that I liked the pocket for, and that's how I cut it out. Now, it did involve a lot of pinning to be able to get it to fit properly, but so now the pocket goes straight down like most pockets do, and so my hand can fit entirely. Basically, the only thing that stops it is my watch. So the first thing I did was actually cut the bottom of the pocket off and kind of clean up this area. I did leave this part completely alone just because I don't feel like removing something that sort of stabilized the pocket in place. I swear I know how to use scissors. And I'm sure you could probably do this with a seam ripper as well. Also, special shout out to my mother for the most awesome thing ever, the seam ripper, for when I ripped apart the jeans that I got this template out of. Okay, so that should be good. So now that I've got that open, I found that the easiest thing to do was to trim out the area that I'm going to sort of replace. So then I cut out this area, attempting not to mess up the area above, which is what makes it so that the pocket looks like it's a continuous part of the jeans, so that it's still got the regular denim on the outside. And so I basically cut until it starts getting close to the top of it. So as you can see, still have this all looking the same, and basically your hand comes out the other side. So then I made a template of the pocket from this, and basically like ignored the part that goes down here. Hello, red line. And just made the basic shape. So I basically sewed it together and left this top area not closed, and basically about 2/3 up the side here, so that I could attach to this circular area here. So we're basically attaching it to the pre-existing pocket. Basically the open part goes on this side so that it will attach the pocket. The closed part goes on the outside. And I just used a folded up piece of pillowcase that I thrifted for like 50 cents, I think. So, reduce, reuse, recycle. So, most of this is sort of finagling, honestly. Just seeing where I can get things into place. Now, this is where we start pinning. I hate pinning things because I stab myself all the time. So, you do you. I do find that the claw things that I was using for t-shirts do not work in this area because there's too many angles that you kind of have to get into. So I basically just pinned it to sort of set it into place, and then went back and cleaned it up a little bit because there's so many seams that you have to sew, and I'm not going to carry you through all of that because that's a lot, but I'm going to show off the pinning process. So basically we've got our outer pins here, and then I found it easier to actually go into the inside of the pocket because obviously, you know, you've got a lot to deal with here because we have two sides to pin. I guess this is the outer side. So the outer side that attaches to the outside of the front of the jeans, and then the inner side that attaches to that half circle that's inside the pocket. So what I found to be easiest is actually just to pin it to just below the seam line here. So if you look at this here, I just basically am going to pin it along the seam here. It also keeps it a little cleaner. What I ended up doing also is felling down the seam so that the edges are cleaner and less likely to fray. And so what I ended up doing was pinning it just below that line and then folding it over and sewing it into place like as it's folded under, so that you get more for the thread to grip on, but also it's less likely to fray in the future because you know, like I put my hands in my pockets all the time, so also at work I use it to carry all of the things around with me, cables and our little easy pay guys as well. Also, shout out to my work real quick for giving us the time off of work to be able to try to keep the United States safe here, while also making sure that we were all still getting paid, because not a lot of places are doing that. And you know, thanks a lot, Apple, I appreciate that. Okay, so we basically got this pinned into place, and as you can see, it does cover this. So my intention when I'm sewing it is to flip it under, and then I'll sew that down with a felling stitch, which is basically a whip stitch. You can look that up. To my girl Bernadette, who is the person who taught me how to do that, Bernadette Banner, she's also on YouTube, and she is amazing. So now that we've got that part pinned and this guy pinned, I started by sewing this this guy down here. So because this one is still open, I actually sewed this up a little higher than I probably should have, but I decided I didn't care because it's inside my pants and no one's gonna see that. Obviously you could take measurements and be smart like that. I did not. I basically just wanted something to work on while I was being quarantined. Or not quarantined, social distancing, which for an extrovert is like being quarantined. So I also pinned this guy. Now this area is one of the ones where you do have to be really particular about how far you put your needle in, because it can sew the pocket to itself, and then also your stitches are going to show in the front of the jeans as well. So that is how I pinned that into place. Now when you're sewing it down, you do have to sew here, here, and then I sewed on the top interior. I also, once I had sewn the top interior and the back in, I put it inside out and sewed this this portion down as well. I actually sewed this portion down 3 different times because this is partially where it connects to the jeans itself. So I sewed it on the inside and on the outside just by feel. So like going along this seam and following it through here. So then once I finished with that, I did actually sew this area down. So I you can't see. So I sewed this area down to the jeans themselves, just because I noticed that most jeans, the part that like sits on your hip, is actually sewn to the jean itself, as you can see here. And that gives it some stability so that the pocket isn't moving around and also coming out of your jeans when you take your hand out of your pocket. So when I did that, I did fell the edges down so that they were a little bit more stable, and because I literally just did a running stitch, you could do a running back stitch or a back stitch on this to make this a little bit stronger. So I felled all the way to the end there. This side I obviously already completed, so you can see that there are some stitches along here. They are pretty faint, and I don't care because it means that I get pants that have pockets that I can put my hands into. Now this is the area where the pocket corner is, and that one's a lot harder to see. I did attach it pretty multiple times. I also felled the stitches on the side as well as the bottom here. So I basically sewed along here and then did the attachment. But you can see it is a big old mess back here because I did a whole bunch of different kinds of stitches to try to get this, because I'd never done anything like this before. Also, if you look on the interior, you can see just like, you know, it's pretty, like they're pretty close together. I did a lot of stitches because I wanted this to be really strong. And so that is how I did that, and hopefully this makes sense to you. Bye.